Hey, BassGeek here, and during the summer, an underspin is an extremely consistent bait when it comes to catching bass. But most anglers don't understand that when pairing it with the right swim bait, it will almost always outperform a standalone swim bait. Now let me show you when, where, and why you need to be using an underspin in a variety of sizes and shapes. During the summer, I will put a underspin in somebody's hand that goes fishing with me before I'll put a straight swim bait. 99% of the time. So what is it that makes an underspin during the summer so good? Well, unlike the winter time, when the bass move out during the summer, they're warm. Now we know because of forward facing sonar that even during the winter time, the bass are not inactive or as dormant as we originally thought. But the one thing that we've learned is that their strike zone shrinks tremendously. Well, during the summer, when it's warmer, that's kind of the exact opposite. They'll come from long distances to investigate or eat the right bait. And 90% of the time, an underspin is the right bait when it comes to summer fishing. No matter the size, you can match the hatch. Now, one of the things that I always like to do when it comes to an underspin is go slightly bigger when it comes to the swim bait than the shad that they're eating. And the reason why is because what that does is it couples that blade with the size of the shad that they're eating. So the blade is what I tend to match the hatch with, not the swim bait itself. A lot of times if you match a smaller swim bait, the blade is going to be smaller. So for me, matching the blade to the hatch is more important than matching the swim bait to the size of bass that they're feeding on. Now, what is it about that blade that seems to get those bass to come up and eat? Because you throw a spinner bait and they're not going to bite that nearly as well as they're going to bite that underspin. The thing about it is I think it's the positioning of the blade itself. The blade itself is below the swim bait, which doesn't allow as much sunlight to get to that blade. So instead, you get a little bit of flash, but you get a lot more sound. You still get the sound and the vibration that triggers that lateral line on those bass. To me, that's the key when it comes to a summertime underspin. Being able to couple two things: a swim bait that has a good tail action with an underspin that has a little bit of vibration, and then you get the right underspin that, coupled with the right swim bait, gives just a little bit of head roll. You now have a 3-action bait. Then you get a little bit of flash from the blade. You now have a 4-action bait. I don't know that there's another bait on the market that can do that. And that's why I love to put an underspin in people's hands that come fishing with me during the summertime. They almost always catch a big bass, and a lot of times the biggest bass they've ever caught. The underspin during the summer in deeper water is stellar, but don't neglect it when it comes to deep grass lines, brush piles, docks. It has a triggering action that no other bait does while being extremely subtle at the same time. I mean, I fish lakes that regularly in the summer are 10, 12, even 20 and 30 foot deep. And an underspin catches bass in every single one of those. You can fish it in the dirtier lakes you got 2-3 foot of water visibility, an underspin is going to catch bass in those bodies of water also. Size. There's a ton of sizes out there and a ton of things you can do with them. But let me show you why coupling the right head and the right swim bait is extremely important. So one of the most important things when it comes to an underspin is getting the size right. And there's generally 2 ways I go about that. It's match the hatch or exceed the size of the hatch. Generally, if you throw a smaller than the bait fish that the bass are feeding on, you're not going to get as many bites, if any bites. Most of the time, for me, even in the clear lakes that I fish, the extremely clear lakes that I fish, going bigger gets more bites. So for me, I'm either going to match that hatch exactly, or I'm going to exceed that size of bait fish so that I can present some sort of steak instead of some little whiny weenies to those bass. But the good thing about underspins is there's a ton of different ways to rig them and a ton of different ways to use them. And that really brings me to some of the underspins that I use most. You know, anything from the flashy swimmer, which allows you to rig your swim bait, and they come in a ton of different sizes, weedlessly. So you can really get down in those brush piles. You can fish this around some sparse grass. You can really get this bait as shallow or deep as you would like. Now there's a few other brands out there that are weedless underspins, and I'll put links to everything down in the description below. And by the way, we don't do memberships and stuff. We like to include everybody, so we'll put those links in the description below to Tackle Warehouse, and that really is the best way to support the channel. Now, some of the others that I like, and I'm really an exposed hook guy. I would rather fish an exposed hook over top of the brush piles than I would, you know, really getting it down in there. Both work, and it really just depends on what the bass are doing. But another way that I like to fish them during the summer is, and I let the bass tell me what they want. If they're suspended and they're up shallower, I'm going to go with one of these 2 brands right here. And that's the Dirty Jigs Tackle Underspin. Now these things go way up, I think, to a half, maybe even a 3/4 ounce, so they get pretty big. These, they go up to a 1/2 ounce, and I don't think they go to 3/4, but one of the things I like about the Pulse Fish Lures version is that the head is actually balanced, so it's not going to blow out, and they all have the smaller hooks on them. And the reason why I say that's important is because sometimes when those bass are up shallow, they're out over open water, or they're suspended over a shallow brush pile, one of the things that I can do with this is that I can put a smaller bait with a heavier weight, and I can fish it much, much faster. And sometimes that is the difference in getting a bass to bite or getting a bass to just look at your bait. Sometimes they're going to want it slower, and sometimes they're going to want it faster, maybe even with a quick stop and go action to it. So these 2 brands really give you an option to do some different things with these underspins. Now let's talk about fishing these baits really deep and on bigger heads. Let's talk about fishing them out in deep water. And I mean the deepest of waters that you could imagine fishing them. This is one of my favorites right here. This is the Ledge Head. This is a, I believe, 6/3 ounce. As you can see, it's stamped in the side. And what I love about this is it's got a wire that comes down, and I'll bend them straight out so that it works just below the belly, so it moves that target perfectly under that hook. Because one of the things that you'll get is sometimes those bass are just going to target that blade. Now you can make changes to the blade, and one of the things, I've got a great video that talks about some hacks to an underspin that will will link at the end of this video, so that when those bass are biting at that blade and maybe just coming underneath the bait, you're going to catch them. Now, all that being said, ledge head lures, these are really designed to be fished out on the ledges, and they make these all the way up to, I think it's like 8/0 hooks, so big hooks, and I think 1 ounce and 3/8 ounces, so 1 3/8 ounces. So you can get these things huge. So if you've got gizzard shad that like to get out there on the ledges during the summer, trust me, get some of these big baits. Tag you or couple up a big swim bait with them and go out there and catch some giants during the summertime. Now, one of the things that I like is this right here. This is a Bass Munitions little bait right here, and I've used theirs for a long time, little swim bait. This is about a 5.5 inch swim bait. I love that in the clear water. We'll do a video one day talking about the difference between summer swim baits and winter swim baits, but this is, to me, an incredible summer swim bait. Now, I also use the 3.5, and this is the ledge head. This is a 1/2 ounce head. Now, the ledge head underspin is called the Tennessee River Bling because of the ledges, of course. And this is the, I think he calls it the micro ledge head. This is one of my favorite baits. This is a 1/2 ounce, and this is a 3.5 inch Bass Munitions. Now, like I said, one of the things, I had to change blades on this because I literally had a fish beat the other one off of it. So put me a little dirty jigs. But sometimes I go a little bit smaller because it helps keep these baits down a little bit deeper. But one of the things I love about this is a 1/2 ounce head, and I can get this bait out there 20 to 30 feet deep on a good slow roll. Now, most of the time when I'm fishing them out there deep, that's how I'm going to fish them. It's going to be a nice slow roll. You can count these things down, get them down there super deep, and even with the lack of light, which again is one of the reasons why I said earlier, I think a blade is incredibly important, because you still get a thump. You're not getting all the flash because the bait is above the body like we talked about earlier. But this, again, is one of my go-tos. I stick this in almost everybody's hands during the summertime. All right, geeks, so really rod, reel, line, I mean, it could be 100 different ones. I'm just going to give you a couple that I use on the smaller ones. The bigger ones, you're just going to want to upside to like a heavy, fast action, that sort of stuff. But for the ones that I throw most of the time, even the 3/4 one that I showed you earlier, this is kind of my go-to setup. I like to throw them on a bait caster every chance I get and any time I get. And this is one of the Resolves. It's a 7'3". I also like a longer rod, 7'3", 7'6", anytime I can get my hands on it, because what that does is, especially when I'm fishing those schools during the summer that are out there on the ledges, I want to be able to cast past them. So I don't want to drop them on their head. I want to be able to cast past them, so a long rod is the key to that. The other thing is having a good spool that's going to hold enough line to be able to make that cast past those schools, so that you can come through every single bass, create that competition, and get more bites. And that's why I use a BB1 Pro. Now, I've got some of the newer BB1 Pros. This is one of the old ones, but trust me, it holds a ton of line too, and it's perfect for this situation. Generally, if I'm fishing the bigger, heavier ones out deep, I'm keeping my reel speed pretty slow, which means I believe this is a 6.4 to 1. I would not go above a 6.5. Low and slow if you're fishing them out deep. But this 7'3" is a medium heavy fast action, so I'm going to be able to cast these literally a country mile. Line is extremely important, and if you're not fishing around a lot of structure or cover where you're literally dragging these things on the bottom, or you're not coming, to where you feel like you're going to get these things into brush piles or into grass or around docks, I like 15-pound test. If I'm fishing these out on the ledges or out for those bass in or over the ledges, over the humps, over, you know, whatever, 15-pound test Pro 100 K9 is what I go with, and it's because I understand the line diameter and how slow that I need to reel this. Learning a combo for a specific bait makes you better. And this is a combo that I've used forever, so I understand how fast I need to reel it. I understand how much drag my line is going to create, and I understand how fast or slow I need to reel this to be able to keep it at a consistent level in the water column. Now that goes likewise when it comes to the smaller swim baits. The smaller swim baits, and I would say when we're talking about smaller, I'm probably going to go up to a 1/4 ounce. Once we get into that 3/8 ounce, I'm probably going to run to this, depending on the size of the swim bait too. You get away with 3/8 on this rod, which is a TFO option. This is also a 7'3". Like I said, I like to be able to make those longer casts with these rods. It is a 7'3" medium fast action. And one of the things that I've got on here is I've actually got the K9 JDM silk braid, which allows me to cast even further because this is an incredibly smooth line. As far as the reel, we got a Daiwa Fuego LT. This is 3000 series, and this is a combo I really like because, again, I can make those long casts, get this bait up past those schools if they're feeding on that really small shad, or if they're blowing up, I can throw this out there, reel it quick over top of those bass, and get those bass to react to this underspin. You've got to let the bass tell you how they want this bait presented. 90% of the time, it's going to be a good, slow roll. So getting the weight right as compared to the depth in the water column and the lure. There's just so much that goes into it. It's why we talked about rod, reel, and line. Getting all of it correct so that you can fish it slow at the depth the bass are feeding in. It all is key. There is a little exception to this rule, and that's when the bass might need to be triggered. The great thing about an underspin, it's a reaction bite even when it's moving slowly because it triggers so many senses on the bass. Eyesight, vibration, 3 different ways, and flash. So you can trigger those bass and get a reaction strike a lot of times based on the bait alone and what's naturally built into it. But every once in a while, there comes a time when you need to burn one, just like burning a spinnerbait, but you're not going to wake it on top. What you're going to do with this is you're going to fish a little heavier. Now, you want to continually, like I said, upscale that shad just a touch, but this time you're going to go heavier. So let's say you would normally throw, let's just say an 1/8 ounce head down to about 10 feet of water. Well, now I want to go a little heavier. I might go to a 1/4, I might go to a 3/8, depending on how fast I want to reel it. And the thing I want to do is I want to reel it quick, I want to stop it, and just like with a spinnerbait, I want that blade to do something crazy. So I'm going to twitch it maybe twice, and I'm going to start burning it again. I'm going to give it about 4 or 5 reel turns, and I'm going to do it again. Now, the slow roll, it's easy as can be. You just throw out there, you get that bait down to the desired depth, whether you're dropping it to the bottom, getting that blade turning by giving it a little turn of the handle or a little pull of the rod tip, or you count it down and you just start reeling. And the hit is going to be the speed that you need to get that size bait consistently at that depth level. So if you're fishing a 1/2 ounce at 15 feet down, might be a little faster than if you're fishing it at 25 feet down. So those are some things you just have to learn, because I fished underspin for literally, I feel like 20 years. These are things that I'm comfortable with this combo and understanding the gear that I have to be able to get it at those depths and catch fish. So it's going to take some time and effort to learn. I've taken so many different people fishing and put an underspin in their hands only to watch them lose that first fish that they catch. Because once they set the hook, that bass is going to fight. And a lot of times when we're fishing out deeper, it's going to be a little bit bigger. And if it isn't a little bit bigger, it's going to feel bigger because a lot of times it's deeper. So you got a little more drag from everything that's pulling on you. So to keep from losing that fish, look, you want a good setup on those bigger ones, and you're going to want to side set, keep that rod tip down, put it in the water. If they jump, you're going to reel faster. You're going to speed up if you see them coming to the top of the water, so that you fill their mouth up and keep them from jumping. You're going to create drag. You're going to drag them in. You're going to boat hop them, or you're going to get a net. You ain't got time to put them on the thumb, because this little bait will torque itself free if you allow them to jump and hop on the side of the boat. Get them in the boat. Now, that same thing applies when we're using the smaller ones. Now, of course, you're not going to set the hook and winch it in on a spinning combo, but you're going to make sure that your drag is set correctly. So you're going to set the hook, you're going to back that drag off, and you're going to keep that rod tip down. Better than anything you can do, keep that rod tip in the water, because even the light underspins have a lot of metal and weight to them, and the tail of the swim bait will act to twist that and break that hook free from inside that bass's mouth. So keep the rod tip down, get them there as quickly as you can without forcing them in, get that net, and get those bass in the boat. Geeks, I hope this is going to compel you to get out there and really look at using an underspin a lot more often. I think it's one of the most underutilized summer baits when it comes to ledge fishing that I know of, or just summer fishing in general, whether you're shallow or whether you're deep. I just think it is a really underutilized bait when it comes to summer bass fishing. It is probably one of my go-tos. It is always, from the time the bass start to move out in the summertime, when we start seeing those temps in the mid-70s, this is always on my boat in one form, fashion, or the other. Getting a lot of bass, especially those smallmouth and those spotted bass, love to hit that blade and come in low below that swim bait. Hey, make sure you go check out this video right here for some tips and tricks on how to catch those bass on this underspin. Otherwise, questions, comments in the comment section below. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell, be part of the 100% Watch Squad, and you geeks rock.